Welcome to the podcast. My name is Father Bill W. I'm an Episcopal priest, and I live here in Austin, Texas, and have had the gift of recovery since December the 27th of 1972. Idea behind these podcasts is to go deeper into the spirituality, the history, and the psychology that surround the 12-step recovery process. So, I think this the possibility for growth is limitless if we can just get beyond it. It's just not drinking and drugging, and it's learning how to live and learning how to live a full and complete life. So that's what I'm about. And I try to get people on here who share that view. We have one with us today. His name is Tom Lavin. Tom is a marriage and family therapist in Reno, Nevada, also a licensed drug counselor, adjunct faculty at the University of Nevada. And for many years, Tom's been helping people find greater meaning and purpose in their lives through applying the principles of Viktor Frankl. Frankl really saved my butt in that first year of recovery, man's search for meaning, because I was desperately searching for it and had lost connection with the meaning and purpose of my life. And Frankl really helped me through a very difficult stage there. Tom's got a number of things that I put into the show notes. He's got a newsletter. You can sign up for that, and a Live Better TV series that can go in depth into some of the subject matter that we're covering here. Tom is kind of working us through a book called The Doctor and the Soul. It's one of Frankl's books. This chapter, we're going through kind of chapter by chapter, particularly the ones that are meaningful to alcoholics and addicts, people in 12-step recovery. And this one is on the meaning of work. And that's a subject that touches everybody in recovery. And many of us find our own identity or our lack of identity through work. But Frankl says we are not defined so much by what we do as we are by how we do it. And he goes on to say, the work in itself does not make the person indispensable and irreplaceable. It only gives him the chance, the opportunity to do so. So, Tom, on this whole subject of work and how important it is to us and the place, the role that it plays for us, why don't you kind of lay the foundations for us there?
Okay, Bill. Yeah, good morning, Bill. Good to see you. Yeah, so, Viktor Frankl, while he encouraged each of us to search for our own individual, unique sense of meaning in our life, Frankl was always sensitive that this search for meaning for each individual human being, it occurs within a historical and social context. Frankl was doing this work in post-World War I, and what was, in terms of the psychology of Germany and Austria after the defeat in World War I. Then he also applied it to what was going on with people during World War II and then immediately after World War II. Then he applied it like in the United States in the 50s and 60s and 70s, where we had a very affluent Western civilization. There's a context for our search for meaning. And so, not being a sociologist or an economist, but I want to share a little bit about our current United States social context in which people are searching for meaning and how it applies to work and our life and our sense of meaning. Current research shows that a family of four with 2 partners and 2 kids, a secure family lifestyle is between $75,000 and $100,000 a year. Families that are in that income level, there's a certain amount of stress that they're not feeling because food, clothing, shelter, transportation, healthcare are pretty much taken care of. But what the research shows is the less a family of 4 makes, like from 75 down to 50 or 40 or 30 or 25, as you go down, the stressors to put food on the table, have a roof over their head, have transportation, live in a safe neighborhood, more and more stress is accumulated the farther down the economic scale we go. Now, again, Frankl would talk about how that's not determinative because we can have the defiant power of the human spirit. We can have a sense of tragic optimism. These attitudinal values that we spoke about earlier in the series, Bill, can help families when they're under that level of distress. On the other hand, the more and more affluent families are, the greater the chances for an existential vacuum because there are no challenges. Everything kids grow up is called affluenza, huh? Kids grow up and things are just given to them. And there can be a sense of entitlement, and there can also be a sense of arrogance, like, see what I did and how much better I am or we are than these other people that don't have this. And we see in our society, I think, Bill, we'll talk more about this, but deaths of despair, teen suicide, being on social media, and having terrible self-esteem and inability to connect. Um, and we see culturally and politically the divisions in our society right now between the haves and the have-nots, or people who feel left out of for the last 20 years and looking into the future, feeling that they and their children and grandchildren maybe have been left out of this economy. So there's a sense of demoralization and anger and frustration. So again, as a non-sociologist and non-economist,
Right.
I just did my best to kind of paint the context then for work in our society. William James, who would have been like a soul brother for Viktor Frankl, says, what is it that gets you out of bed in the morning? And of course, what he's asking is, what gives your life meaning? Why are you getting up out of bed? What intention do you have? And again, it might be that sublime, I love my work. I work at a great place. I can't wait to get there and contribute and be creative. Or on the other hand, hey, I'm getting out of bed to just survive and make enough money to take care of my family so we've got a roof over our head and food on our table tonight. But what is getting us out of bed? And in both of those areas, no matter what is going on, whether it's sublime or survival, we can have a sense of meaning and purpose in what we are doing, Bill.
And you need to be conscious of that. So where you're laying the foundation, it's important that we understand what's happening to us.
Yes.
That we are economically trapped, that is the real situation. On the work front, I was very irresponsible. I would go off and I would do different things. I'd go all around the world, big on the geographical cure. And then when I got in trouble, my parents would take me in,
Yeah.
you know? And when I got sober, what they said to me is, you need to be responsible for yourself.
Yeah.
Don't take anything from your parents.
Yeah.
Well, that was a shock, man. That was reality therapy. Old William Glasser. Remember him?
Yeah.
I was reading that book too. It was like, well, here's a heavy dose of reality. But I'm so grateful for it. Put it in perspective. Without them, I got nothing.
Yeah.
And that's what they said. Well, there's a place for people who have nothing. It's the Salvation Army. Why don't you go start your recovery there?
Yeah.
I said, you're out of your damn mind.
Yeah.
It was quite an attitudinal adjustment, shall we say.
Yeah. As we grow in recovery, we grow in terms of being more independent and autonomous and responsible.
Right.
And part of that too is we grow in terms of our interdependence because we learn about connections in recovery and deeper connections in our family and deeper connections in society. So we're growing on both levels, personal responsibility and then interpersonal responsibility.
Right.
And that's where the real sense of connection with our deep interpersonal self and connection with others occurs. And of course, then it manifests itself in terms of work and why we're getting out of bed in the morning.
Yeah.
And where are we putting our talents and our gifts to make life better for ourselves and other people?
Which may be in the job or it may not be in the job, but the reality is I need to go and do what's in front of me to put bread on the table.
Yes.
So let's start off with unemployment, okay? So it's one of the areas that Frankl gets to.
Yeah.
He terms it unemployment neurosis. Expression is, if I could just find a new job or I could just find a better job, then I'd be all right.
Yeah.
And he also says that for the unemployed, depression isn't so much the problem as it is apathy.
Yeah.
What does he mean by that? And how do you think Frankl would counsel a patient who's facing unemployment?
His experience with this started out in post-World War I, where the economy was devastated and people were demoralized, but then also the economy was demoralized, and there was gigantic unemployment in Germany.
Huge inflation too.
Yeah, huge inflation.
I mean, money was almost worthless.
Yes, yes. And of course, this led to the rise later of Nazism and World War II. But what he was referring to was apathy, just giving up. Like, what's the use? What's the use? I can't find a job. And if I don't have a job, I'm worthless. And I don't have enough to take adequate care of my family. Or if they're a young person and they're wanting to start a career and start a family, they were highly apathetic. Like, what's the use? Maybe transfer a little bit more toward today, like what happened with the United States economy in 2007, 8, and 9, or for people in their 50s and 60s that were still working, young people trying to find a job, or what happened during the pandemic more recently, where again, the economy cratered and economic prospects diminished and people felt like there was nowhere to go. Where am I going to get, and so this sense of apathy, like, what's the use? We talked earlier, Bill, about learned helplessness. Like, no matter what I do, I can't positively affect my life. Again, Frankl would say it's understandable that you're feeling that way.
That's the most important thing, Tom, isn't it? Validate what people are experiencing and feeling. Don't tell them you shouldn't be feeling that.
In terms of recovery and those two time periods, like 2007, 8, 9, and the pandemic time, when you consider how stressful that was for people that had jobs and had careers, but they were losing them. Now put our mindset to men and women who are newly recovered alcoholics and drug addicts. They're getting out of prison. They're coming to a residential facility like Ridge House here in Reno, Nevada. The stigma of being a recovering alcoholic and drug addict, and their work history shows for the last 5 or 10 or 15 years they've been in prison. So again, we were counseling them. They were demoralized. Like, I'm in recovery now. I'm going to meetings. I'm going to group therapy. I'm getting individual counseling. I'm in a residential treatment center, but there's no job out there for me. Yeah. So again, this idea of learned helplessness and hopelessness. What am I going to do? So we start off and say, of course you feel terrible. You're demoralized. You don't have a vision for a future that you can fulfill. The first thing is to accept what is. Accept that you're feeling terrible. You're feeling like, I don't know if I have a future or not. I feel discouraged. I don't know if I have the heart to go forward because I've had so many defeats in my life and I got clean and sober in prison, or et cetera, et cetera.
That's the apathy. What's the use? What's the use?
Yeah. And so Frankl, of course, would validate that. But then in practicing logotherapy, we would talk about the defiant power of the human spirit. I am going to tap into my defiance and say, these conditions are not going to define me. I'm going to have a sense of optimism, and one way or another, I'm going to find a job, and no matter what that is. I might need to lower my expectations for what that might be. I might be less demanding about what opportunities. I'm going to do whatever I have to do to survive, and that's fine. And so the defiant power of the human spirit. And then Frankl would also tap into the sense of tragic optimism. Yes, what's happening in our society and in my life right now, it's a tragedy that, and people that had never been on unemployment before. People that had never been on welfare before, people that had never lost their health insurance and are struggling. Well, how do you get on Medicaid? How does that work? Blah, blah, blah. I will find a way. Tragic optimism. I will find a way within the midst of this tragedy. And if I don't do anything stupid, like if I stay clean and sober, and if I don't do anything else stupid, but have some level of sanity and optimism, this is going to work out for me. And as Frankl would say, if we accept the challenge and the difficulty, but we do it, Bill, with a sense of optimism that this is going to work out for me, I just need to stay clean and sober. I need to have a sense of optimism and do everything I can do and don't do anything stupid. Things are going to work out. And Frankl would say, with that type of attitude, generally, that type of attitude and behavior, Bill, things will work out in the long run.
Right. But, and what you said this last time we met, and my field of focus is the immediate time frame in front of me.
Yes.
It's today.
Yes.
You know, I'm going to get out of bed today.
Yeah.
And I'm going to focus on this 24 hours ahead.
Yes.
And do what I can there
Yeah.
to bring about, not to look 10 years down the road. That's not realistic.
Yeah, Bill. And then within that 24 hours, again, with people in recovery within a 12-step framework, or even, people that are in a religious framework, that's where they're finding their recovery more specifically. They put their will and their life in God's hands, the hands of a power greater than themselves. People in the 12-step would take their third step in the morning and turn their will and their life over to God. It's like, boy, this really looks scary. This looks like it's not going to work out, but somehow it's going to.
Yeah.
And then working the 11th step, searching for a knowledge of God's will and the power to carry it out. It's like, I feel discouraged. I've lost heart, but I'm going to get heart through belief in my higher power.
Right.
And the encouragement of people in the fellowship and my sponsor that things are going to work out.
And connection with that power.
Yes, yes.
So I like what you're saying, and it's really important, I think, that we focus in on that. My life and my will. Those two they're not accidentally linked there. My life may look like hell, but that is my life. At this moment, that is my life. Yeah. Now, what is my will? Am I operating on my will, which might well be apathy or screw it, or I get into these questions of logotherapy that what is life asking of me? Because I look at life and I say, well, you ain't answering me very well. You're not giving me the things I think I want.
Yeah.
But life has given me this.
Yes.
And I can't deny that reality.
Yeah.
Now what? Where's my will in this?
So we started off talking about Frankl, talking about the stress and demoralization and apathy of people who are unemployed.
Right.
Let me transition for a minute, because I've done a lot of work with people who are employed.
Yeah.
Feeling demoralized and having apathy. I had the honor for 15 years of being the employee assistance counselor for the employees of the two largest medical systems in Northern Nevada. The workplace is a jungle, like a hostile work environment where people feel bullied. They feel like they're not adequately compensated. There are politics in the organization. There are supervisors that are mean and domineering and overbearing.
The workplace often is an environment that replicates my family of origin. The boss becomes the father figure. And if I hated my father, a lot of that energy is going to go towards that son of a gun.
That's true. That frequently needs to get worked out.
The environment is really important there. So what you're saying is you can have a job and still not find the meaning, the proper relationship to that job. It becomes too much.
Yeah. And
I got a job, but in some cases, Tom, the job has me. My identity can get totally wrapped up in that job. I am what I do. Yeah,
that's a trap anytime we over-identify with any external manifestation in our life, huh? Like the title we have or the prestige that we have or the money that we make. And so some people, again, going back to having a deep sense of meaning and satisfaction in our work, even people that might have prestigious jobs and a bunch of money, they lack that sense of meaning or purpose or connection in their work. Like what's coming to my mind are some surgeons that I've counseled who hate their work. They hate being surgeons. They became doctors because their family wanted them to be a doctor. They got into surgery because it made more money. And now they feel like sometimes they're working like somebody in Detroit working at a plant, cranking out knees or hips or hearts or whatever. And there's so much pressure to produce and produce and produce. Some of these men and women who are surgeons, they don't have time to take lunch. They don't have time to take a break. They don't take vacations. They feel under a tremendous amount of stress. The same thing with some attorneys that
Right.
became attorneys because their families wanted them to do that, or they wanted the prestige, but they're having to bill like 70 or 80 hours a week, and they feel it's totally oppressed. They don't want to be attorneys, but they feel trapped. And so there are these different dynamics on the whole continuum of the socioeconomic spectrum in terms of
Yeah.
work.
The machine takes over.
It can be like that, yeah.
And then you become a cog in that machine.
Yes, it can be
And your
like that.
values get totally screwed up.
I want to talk a little bit about the culture of the workplace
Yeah.
because so many people find that it's demoralizing and demeaning. Like there's a joke in healthcare among nurses where nurses will say nurses eat their own. What are they talking about? The environment sometimes in a hospital, like the consulting I've done in hospitals, where I will talk with just some wonderful, amazing nurses about how great the work is that they're doing at the bedside with the patients
Yeah.
and how caring and loving they are. And they really help the doctors do their work. And then they get back in the break room or at the nurses' station and they're mean as hell to each other. And there's gossip and there's backbiting and there's political intrigue. And so some of the work that I had to do there and in other workplaces is to move the workplace forward so that it's one that it's nurturing to the worker so that they feel cared for, they feel cared about, that they're not just a cog in the wheel, Bill,
Right.
but each individual person is important and respected and has dignity in their own right. And so that's some of the work that some workplaces need to do. And there may be some people, there probably are some people here who own businesses listening to us, or
Right.
they're managers or directors. And so this is a cue to them that might be something meaningful or purposeful in their life, and that is to create a truly loving, caring work environment that Max Dupree in his book Leadership is an Art talks about, creating that type of environment for their employees. So, Bill, going back to what you were talking about, where we can over-identify with the title that we have in our
Right.
job, or I am this job. We're talking in our society more about how vocational training has really gone downhill in the last 50 years. And part of that has to do with we haven't valued people who work with their hands. We haven't valued carpenters and plumbers and electricians and jacks of all trade and the work that they do. And so we're finding more predominant in junior colleges now, where we are valuing those people and the good work that they do. And we're also seeing a good income that they can make for their families by owning these businesses or being a tradesman or a journeyman in these trades. And so that dignity of work, that I am a skilled craftsperson and I can go into someone's home and solve a problem for them in terms of carpentry or plumbing or being an electrician. I think that's so important. The dignity of work for those people who are CNAs, for those people who are home health providers, for those people who are maintenance people and housekeepers in institutions, people that work in the fast food industry, let's say, treat those people with dignity and thank them for the work that they're doing to make everything work within this environment in the most effective and efficient manner. so frequently we denigrate the work. You know, I think for all of us, we want to thank those people for the work that they do.
Go back to the COVID epidemic,
Yeah,
being thankful to the people who were coming to work at the grocery stores. I think there was a new level of consciousness that was
yeah,
raised for
yeah,
those people who might otherwise have been negated,
yes,
in terms of their value. There,
yeah,
there was an appreciation. We ain't
yeah,
going to get fed if these people aren't there. Same thing with the nurses. You said a couple of episodes ago, Frankl didn't just invent this stuff in the concentration camp.
no,
He had these ideas, but he tested them in the concentration camp.
yes, he sure
Because if
did.
we're sitting there saying, well, that might be okay in some environments, but you want to see the damn environment I'm stuck in, you know?
Yeah,
Well, his was kind of an extreme example, wasn't it?
yeah, concentration camp. I mean, and that's why so many of us love Frankl.
Yeah,
His therapy in itself, standing on its own on two legs, it's a beautiful therapy that helped millions of people.
right.
And Frankl didn't just invent this in a university somewhere, he lived it. And he helped other people in the concentration camp live logotherapy. And so I think, Bill, that gives us even more power. And like you said, if Frankl can do this, I can do this.
That's it.
Yeah. And so that
That's it.
he is like a light shining in the darkness for so
Right.
many of us.
That's right.
You know, Bill, if I could transition back to something you mentioned a bit ago, where you talked about Frankl talked about the living values and how important living values and not just having a title, how important that is. I think Frankl would say we want to have a commitment to values like I have a commitment to being a kind person and then in action being a kind person. Well, that would show up in the work that we do and how we drive on the highway and how we treat the person at McDonald's that's serving us.
Right.
And if we have to go to the hospital, how we're treating the housekeeper as well as the doctor. So that kindness is a way of being that also shows up in an action. And Frankl would say that's a totally integrated, meaningful life. Someone who is manifesting those values. And sometimes, Bill, now I do the stress test on myself.
Yeah.
And I also do this with my patients when they're identifying their values. I say for myself and my patients, if we want to know what our true values are and if we're living them, I want to picture this week someone is following behind me with a clipboard and writing down my behavior. And if they looked at my behavior, they would say, the way Tom Lavin is behaving today and this week, these are his values.
Right.
He's arrogant. He's not kind. He's uncompassionate. He's not empathic. He talks it, but he doesn't walk it.
Right.
Or are they going to say, well, sometimes he's kind, sometimes he's compassionate. He's a pretty nice guy. He cares about people. But what if somebody was following us around? What would they write down about our behavior? I think Frankl would say, hey, that's great.
Yeah.
And this gets back to the spiritual life is not a theory, we have to live it.
Right. Because somebody is following us around. And you can call that God or you can call it the unconscious,
Uh-huh.
and I think the two are pretty damn close together,
Yeah. Yeah.
So I may not be aware at one level of my arrogant behavior,
Yeah.
but at some other level, it's registering.
Yeah.
And I'm not doing so well on that clipboard,
Yeah.
you know?
Well, and that's where I think hopefully, the 10th step each day when we take a look at, I think Bill called it a balance sheet, didn't he? What have we been doing where we're practicing these principles in all of our affairs and
Right.
we're kind of showing up, we're part of the solution instead of the problem. Or what's the other side of the balance sheet where our shortcomings or character defects are still influencing our life? We're not practicing these principles. And again, what this has to do with is living a meaningful life. When we are practicing these principles, Bill, you mentioned the four absolutes as a way of looking at this.
Right.
Could you remind us the four absolutes, Bill?
Well, let me take 1 minute
Yeah,
to kind of put the foundation in for the Oxford group
yeah,
and the four absolutes.
yeah.
Uh, Frank Bookman also grew up at that time between World War I and World War II, and he was German. Germany got defeated, and it got pounced on badly,
Yeah.
which, as you say, set the stage for World War II. What he was convinced of is the world and individuals, one at a time, need to start living by values.
Hmm.
And he chose four, like you
Hmm.
gave the list of 60 last time. Choose
Hmm.
four and really live by them. So they were honesty in my family life, in my work life, in my social life,
Hmm.
in my religious life. Honesty, purity of heart, purity of mind. Don't give yourself opportunities to wiggle out. Unselfishness. You've been making that case repeatedly that self is the problem,
Hmm.
and the solution is going to be unselfishness. And then the final one, which is our next episode, is love. You got to find something that inspires you, sustains you, gets you out of bed in the morning, like you said.
Uh-huh.
So there they are: honesty, purity, unselfishness, and love.
Yes,
And
yes.
they those came into our 12 steps.
They sure did. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, yep. I mean, in terms of a framework, Bill and Dr. Bob and then the other newly recovering alcoholics, that was their framework, was
that's it.
the Oxford movement and the four absolutes, and that was the foundation. Going back then to choosing certain values at different times in our life that we feel are really essential to living a meaningful life.
Right.
Then by being that person, it shows up in our actions, it shows up in our behavior. By acting that, hopefully we are being a part of the solution instead of part of the problem. And we're making a positive difference in the world. We talked about a context for work and a context for our lives. Two images come to my mind I want to share with you and with everybody else. One image, I took a photograph years ago. Our family was at the ocean, at the Pacific Ocean on the beach. And I love nature photography. And I took a photograph of my footprints on the beach.
Mm-hmm.
And then I took a photograph where a wave came in and covered up half of my footprints.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next wave came in and covered up all my footprints. And so that's one image for us to think about. Like, do we look at our life like it's here and then it's gone and then it's gone?
Right.
The other image is there's a beautiful lake here in the middle of Reno. It's called Virginia Lake. It's 1 mile around. And you can take a rock and throw it out and watch it plop in the lake, and it ripples outwards.
Mm-hmm.
And so, do we look at our life like it's kind of washed over by the Pacific Ocean, it's here and gone? Or do we look at our life and our work as something that ripples outward and it will continue on beyond us? The relationships that we have and how we treat people in our daily life, including our work, is that going to ripple out into society today, one person at a time, and
Right.
into the future, one person at a time? So that's just something for people to think
Yeah.
about, Bill.
You sent me a reference from a fellow. I wasn't familiar with him. Harvard professor Howard Gardner
Uh-huh.
wrote a book, Good Work When Excellence and Ethics Meet.
Yes.
And Gardner developed something that he called the four M's of good work. First one
Right.
was mission, that you
Yes.
have to have a mission, a sense of what you're about. So speak to that if you could.
Yeah. Having a sense of mission, like that is my purpose.
Yeah.
Why am I here on this planet today?
Right. Today. Yeah.
And again, it might be again in that sublime category of work, like being productive and creative, and I love it. Or over here, I'm doing everything I can do to make some money to take care of my family, but that's
Yeah.
my mission today. And it's important that it be self-transcendent. It's greater than just myself.
Right.
I'm not
Yeah.
just working for myself. I'm working somehow to be productive and creative, to care for other people, to make a difference in the lives of other people.
Yeah. And as your life goes on, hopefully, as you age, I mean, this is certainly my case. I mean, it was a time I got 3 kids, I got to work, I got to put food on the table.
Yeah,
The emphasis is over on that side of the spectrum.
yeah,
As I made it to middle class, and then even when I retired, the question remains the same, but the answer can be different.
oh yeah, Bill, yeah,
You know, it's really
yeah.
different. It should be different.
Well, it needs to be. Someone would be living a stagnant life of
Yeah,
desperation
exactly.
if we still held on to all the ideas we had in our 20s and we're in our 50s.
One of the big important books for Frank Bookman, for the Oxford group, and out of that came AA, was a book called The Will of God and a Man's Life Work.
Oh,
They're connected.
yeah,
That step 3 is connected.
yes,
And so when you say mission, what is my work? What is life, God, call it what you will, asking of me today and long term?
yeah,
Because I think it's both. And I got to
yeah,
look at both.
yeah, we do. Yeah,
Yeah,
we need to have some vision and plan for the future. We don't want to try to live in the future, but because we can't,
right,
but and that just causes anxiety. But to have
right. Yeah,
living today, what's the meaning of the circle of my life today and filling
right.
that up?
Yeah.
And what's my vision for the future for myself and my family and my community? And how can I make a difference? Is
Right.
having a sense of mission, Bill.
This is where I think two-way prayer, whatever form of prayer people are doing, that's
Yeah.
what you're listening to.
Yes.
What
Mhm.
is God or life asking of me
Yes.
today and long term?
Yes. Well put, Bill. Yeah.
Yeah. And I got real clear. I mean, because it comes up over and over again. I mean, my mission is to teach people how to do two-way prayer
Yeah.
and to take a second look at the 4 absolutes.
People in recovery understand what it's like to be living discouraged and demoralized and not
Yeah.
having a sense of purpose or meaning and having no reason to get out of bed.
Right.
We know how great it feels to have a sense of purpose and mission. And Frankl said, that it really enlivens our life. We have a sense of meaning and purpose.
Right.
I have something to fulfill, something to contribute. How
Yeah.
great that is to feel that we have something to contribute, as opposed to how terrible it feels to feel I have nothing to contribute. So, mission is essential to having a sense of meaning and purpose and fulfillment in our life, Bill.
The second one is model. Do I have a role model, someone
Yeah,
I can emulate?
my goodness, you know how important that is. Now, all of us, if we just think for a minute, who have been the role models in our life? It wasn't book learning, but we watched them and then we listened to them and maybe they taught us personally.
Yeah.
This is the way to live your life. This is,
Right.
if you want to have a sense of meaning, if you want to be happy, if you want to be fulfilled, this is the way to do it. And I think Bill Wilson would say he would watch different people in the program and say, I want what that person has for this, and I
Right.
want what that person has for this. So for all of us to look at, and if we don't have a mentor, find one, huh?
Yeah.
Go looking for one. Go looking for someone that can help us maybe have a better marriage, be a better parent, be more active in the program, have a better recovery, have a better career or work life. Go looking for a mentor maybe in a specific area of our life, Bill, and say, hey, teach me, coach me,
Right.
help me find what I can do in this area of my life. And like you, Bill, I am so grateful for all the people that have shown up in my life. My goodness, I can't, I couldn't list them all on one sheet.
Yeah.
No way.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, when you look back on it, you can see some of the synchronicity.
And sometimes, though, the people that are our mentors are the people that we would never choose to be our mentors either.
Absolutely.
They taught us some hard lessons in life. Yeah.
That's right. That's right. The third one is mirror number 1. When I look in the mirror, do I feel proud of myself or embarrassed of myself? How can I do my work in a way that generates healthy pride? Healthy
Yeah.
pride.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bill, in counseling, again, with people that would come to talk with me, feeling dissatisfaction with themselves in their work, they would say,
Mhm.
I'm not proud of what I'm doing.
Right.
I don't feel good about myself. I'm not the work I'm doing. Like here's a radical example. If we have time, Bill,
Hmm.
one of them is here. Of course, in Nevada, we have the casino industry, and so from time to time, I've had in my practice casino dealers,
Sure.
and they will come and say, "Tom, it is great in that I'm making money to take care of my family, but I can't stand myself. I can't stand the work I'm
Hmm.
doing
Hmm. Hmm.
because as I'm doing my dealing, I'm seeing somebody waste the money that he needs to feed his kids, house his family, make his car payment, uh, afford health insurance or car insurance, go back to the ATM or the cage, get more money, come back, lose it, lose more. And they're really having an existential or moral crisis. Like, I can't keep doing this. I'm I'm really so dissatisfied. So are we looking in the mirror? There's that poem about the man in the glass. I don't know if people are familiar with it. Um, I can email it to you, Bill, and you could post it on your website if you want to,
Will do.
about the man that looks in the glass and says, "My life is not about pleasing anyone else, it's about looking in the mirror. And when I do, am I okay with myself in terms of, let's say, the four absolutes or other principles in my life? How am I showing up in my life? Am I okay with myself?" The second one is, when I look in the mirror, how do I feel about my profession and the work that we are doing? Am I proud to say that I'm part of a certain profession and what we are doing? But when I'm thinking about this, I'm thinking about people that I've counseled who are in the clergy, and in the last 30 years, it's been disclosed more and more about how clergy has betrayed the trust that was given to them, and they ended up being exploited or sexually abused. And
Hmm.
so clergy that have come to see me for one reason or another, and it's not that they are perpetrators of this violence, but they've said they're embarrassed to be, you know, a certain religion or a certain priest or
Right.
minister within that religion because they feel ashamed of what their profession has done to people. And so they're not, so they're ashamed of what they're doing, just like the casino dealer was ashamed of what they were doing. And the same thing is true with therapists. I mean, I could talk about
Right.
therapists and
Absolutely.
therapists abusing their patients by trying to run their patients' lives, or again, having sexual relations with their patients, or even exploiting them financially with
Right.
conflicts of interest. So I can't say that therapists, no, therapists are just as guilty as priests and ministers are. Um, so yeah, there are times where, as a therapist, I've been totally ashamed of what my colleagues have done. And then there's people that work in the automobile industry, the tobacco industry, the pharmaceutical industry, so many industries that have really destroyed tens of thousands of lives. Are we doing anything to shape those industries, to change those industries or those ministries so that they're more responsive to the needs of people and not destroying people's lives, quite frankly?
What is life or God asking of me in this situation? I am in this situation. This is where I'm working.
Yeah.
Is it God's will that I leave it, or is it God's will that I stay and change it?
Yes.
You
Good.
know?
Well put. Yes.
Yeah. And there's no magic answer. There's no one answer. There's your answer,
Yes.
and that's what you have to find.
Yes.
Yeah, and it needs to be value driven.
Well put, Billy. Good
Yeah.
summary. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So go to work, guys.
Yeah. And hey, Bill, next time when we get into love, because maybe we could get into people in retirement, maybe a little bit about meaning and people in retirement next time.
Well, let's finish up with the retirement because that's
Okay,
part
Bill.
of the work
Yeah.
thing. That's part of the work thing. So let's. I was trying to skip ahead a little bit, but you
Yeah.
caught me. You caught me. So they're very good.
Oh, Bill. Okay, Bill. We have time. All right.
We
Yeah.
have time. Yeah, let's
Yeah.
go.
So,
Let's go.
I mean, my goodness, if we're working, and again, when I say working, I want to include, and I haven't mentioned this, stay-at-home moms who their work is to raise children.
Yeah.
And God bless stay-at-home moms, because that certainly is a full-time job and a half.
Right.
And the love and care and nurturing that they give to children and to their spouse or partner, and the home that they create, the environment that they create, that is a job that is never really fully acknowledged for the contribution it makes to individual lives and to society. So I want to mention that.
Right.
But,
Important.
kids leave home, and so there's the empty nest syndrome. So there's that type of retirement where moms are retired by doing a good job and their kids leave home. And then men and women who do retire from their jobs, and we give 30 or 40 or 50 hours a week of our time and energy and talent to this job, and then we retire. And now what do we do with these 30 or 40 or 50 hours?
Mhm.
There is this retirement malaise, this existential vacuum. And Bill, one of the fastest growing groups of addiction problems with alcohol, marijuana, and gambling are people who are retired.
Wow.
Frankl talked about the absence of meaning quite frequently shows up in boredom. And so
Mhm.
people retire and they're bored. What am I going to do with these hours? What am I going to do with this time? Well, they start drinking more, they start smoking dope more, and they go to the casino. And it's like, hey, this is my home casino. It's like Cheers. Everybody knows my name. I'm going to sit here at the slot machine, and Joe and Mary and Tom and Bill and everybody here knows my name. And I feel like I'm connected and blah, blah, blah.
Right.
So,
Right.
yeah, the highest rate of alcohol and drug and gambling addiction is in the retirement community. That's an area where we want to be more sensitive to this and really provide some help and support. Just like we have young people's groups, I'm not sure, maybe there are some senior groups explicitly in 12-step groups designed for seniors to meet the needs of seniors, as well as treatment programs, Bill, or
Right.
psychotherapy as well.
And again, it goes back to the heart of what we're saying here. I can't be defined by what I do.
Yes,
I am more than that.
yes,
Everyone is more than that.
yes,
And God, life, finds us within that and works within that framework. And it's always possible
yes,
to find meaning and purpose in the environment in which we find ourselves. But we got to
yes.
look. We got to look.
Yeah, we want to search, and we
Yeah.
want to have that sense of optimism that we're going to
Right.
find that. Sometimes it requires that we be patient and courageous and persistent. But yes, we will find it.
Yeah, it's there. And as we say, more will be revealed.
Yes.
Okay. Well, Tom, this was a really good adventure. It's a lot more than just a job. We are social beings, and there's a place for us. What is it that we're intended to do? Because we're not going to feel good about ourselves if we're not doing that. No matter how poorly, that's all right. Just get up and do it. Okay, you ready for love next time, brother?
Yeah, I look forward to it, Bill. It'll be good. Yeah, I know it'll be good. Yeah.
Yeah. So the meaning of love, if you're reading Frankl's book, The Doctor and the Soul, go ahead and read ahead. And if you've got a question on that chapter, shoot me an email. You can write twowayprayer@gmail.com, TWO, twowayprayer@gmail.com. And we may just have a Q&A next time we get together. So
Good.
it could be fun. Tom, thank you so much.
Yeah,
thank
Bill.
you guys for listening. I hope it was helpful. Keep coming back.